It started with a silence that didn't feel like silence at all, just the absence of warmth. For weeks, my wife had been distant, cold, calculating. I told myself it was stress, that maybe work had been wearing her down. But deep down, something in me already knew. Something wasn't right. I worked for her family's company. She was the CEO. I handled logistics, management, all the small details that kept everything running. I was the one staying up late, fixing what others broke, holding her empire together while she took the spotlight. But she never really saw me. Not anymore. One Friday, she called me into her office. The same office where we'd kissed after hours, where we'd made plans for our future, where I'd once believed we were a team. She didn't look up when I walked in, didn't smile, didn't say my name. Just pushed a folder across the desk and said, "We're restructuring. Your position has been terminated." My heart didn't break right away. It just paused. I remember staring at the paper, the official tone of it all. She'd actually made it formal. No warning, no discussion, just a clean professional execution. Behind my back. I looked at her and said, "You couldn't even tell me to my face?" She sighed. "It's business, not personal. You'll find something else. I'll make sure you're compensated, like I was some stranger she'd met once and owed a favor to." I left that office numb. But under that numbness, something darker began to grow. Not anger, something sharper. Clarity. She thought she'd fired me, but what she didn't know was that I'd already been keeping my own secrets. And soon, she'd find out exactly what kind of man she'd married. The night after she fired me, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, replaying every conversation we'd had in the last month. The whispered phone calls, the locked screen, the way she smiled when she thought I wasn't watching. She wasn't just pushing me out of her company, she was erasing me from her life. I started digging, quietly, methodically. She'd forgotten that I was the one who set up the company's back-end systems, the servers, the accounts, the cloud storage. She didn't know that every email, every file she'd ever sent passed through systems I had built. And so, with one password and a few clicks, I started uncovering her truth. The first folder I opened changed everything. Hidden emails, late-night bookings, hotel receipts. But not just any hotel. One where she'd stayed with someone from work. Her new consultant. The same man she'd hired 2 months before, I was restructured. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. A quiet, broken kind of laugh that didn't sound human. She hadn't fired me because of the company. She'd fired me to protect him, to hide their affair. And I waited until the right moment. Not when she was alone, not when it would be private, but when her theater was full and her audience was loud. She loved the spectacle, she loved applause. So I became the quiet hand that would pull the curtain. At the next company gala, under chandeliers and champagne, with cameras handing her the spotlight, I walked in like a ghost from a life she'd tried to erase. She saw me across the room, the smile faltered, a tiny ripple of panic that she tried to smooth into something casual. He noticed me too. His jaw tightened, the easy arrogance gone in an instant. They both thought they still controlled the narrative. They had no idea I'd been scripting the ending. I didn't make a scene, I never did. Instead, I sat at a table near the stage and let the event play its role. The toasts, the music, the way everyone kept saying, "We're a family." Every laugh felt like a fracture, every clink of glass a countdown. Then, when the CEO took the stage to thank everyone, she looked out into the crowd and saw me standing. Her smile broke like thin porcelain. I walked up, took the microphone from the MC with the calm of a man who owns the room because he had finally decided to. The music died. Conversation stopped mid-word. Camera lights swung toward us like vultures. For a second, the world narrowed to her face. Mascara streaked, lips gone pale, and the man at her side looked small. I spoke softly at first, an intimacy the room misread as tenderness. I told everyone we were a team, that I'd been proud to help build the systems that kept them afloat. I praised the people in the room, named names, planted seeds of trust. Then I shifted. the voice cold and even, and I started to unravel the truth I'd stitched together over 12 quiet months. I told them about the discrepancies I'd found in the accounts, the off-books consultant fees, the hotel receipts with different names, the deleted emails recovered from archives. I didn't shout. I recited facts like a ledger, dates, times, screenshots, messages, and the more factual I became, the louder the room roared with its own disbelief. Her mask slipped. He tried to reach for her hand. She pulled away like a reflexive animal. When I revealed the messages, printed and passed around on glossy paper, you could hear the room breathe in as if a storm had moved in. People who had toasted her mere minutes before looked at her like strangers discovering they had been robbed. Her sister covered her mouth. Her father's face turned hard as stone. The man at her side tried to explain himself, to throw blame outward, but every attempt only tangled him deeper. I didn't add commentary. The evidence did the talking. Seeing the proof is different from hearing an accusation. Proof etches itself into people's minds. I watched her eyes search the crowd, begging the faces that had once loved her to understand. She tried to talk to me after the press settled. At first it was public. Interviews with apologies that sounded rehearsed, statements claiming mistakes and misunderstandings. Then it was private. Long messages asking for forgiveness, begging for help to salvage what remained. She wrote about fear, about shame, about how she'd never meant to hurt anyone. She called me at odd hours, left voicemails filled with static and regret. Once, she came to my apartment and stood at the doorway while I made coffee. I watched her watch me. The old instincts pulled, memories of a different life, of kisses in a cramped kitchen, and plans scribbled in the margins of receipts. But that day I closed the door. Not with rage, not with vindictiveness, but with the clean, final motion of a man who had learned the difference between needing closure and owning peace. Months later, word spread that she'd moved in with someone new, attempting to rebuild on a different stage. The public scandal had scarred her brand, but people are forgiving in cycles. Audiences pivot fast if you give them a new story. I didn't follow her arc. I built my own. I started a small consulting firm, not to compete, but to do work with integrity, to be the man who stayed when things got messy because he believed in the craft, not the trophy. Clients who once dismissed me for being too loyal now sought the steadiness I offered. My calendar filled, my bank account healed. Most importantly, I learned to sleep without the noise of waiting for the next betrayal. And in the quiet spaces when the city lights blinked and a plane traced a path in the distance, I thought about what had happened and how fragile the things people build on lies really are. She tried to control everything with a smile and strategic edits of the truth, but control is a brittle thing when it's built on other people's trust. I didn't ruin her. She sowed the seeds of her own downfall. I simply let sunlight in. The rest was inevitable. A few weeks after I turned the corner on rebuilding, her name surfaced again in headlines. Investigations, board reviews, rumors of internal fraud. People assumed I'd planted it. I hadn't. The systems she'd corrupted were collapsing on their own. She had replaced competence with charm, loyalty with performance. When the masks fall, physics takes over. Gravity doesn't need revenge. I watched the story unfold from a distance, one quiet coffee shop morning at a time. There was no satisfaction left, only perspective. I had spent years confusing her attention for love, her ambition for partnership. Now I could see it clearly. She didn't want a husband. She wanted an audience. I had played my role, learned the script, then walked off stage. The show went on without me, but months passed and her name stopped echoing in rooms that used to hold her power. People moved on. Scandals faded. But the echo she left inside me wasn't one of anger anymore. It was understanding. I realized that she hadn't ruined me. She'd revealed me. There's a difference. Sometimes it takes losing everything, the title, the relationship, the illusion, to finally see what was weighing you down. She thought she was cutting me out of her story, but really she was giving me the freedom to write my own. I stopped checking her social media, stopped caring about who she was with or how she spun her new reality. It didn't matter anymore because the truth was simple. I didn't need to win against her. I just needed to stop playing her game. I started rebuilding in silence. A new office, a small team that actually believed in the work. We weren't chasing image, we were chasing integrity. And the crazy part? It felt good to wake up without pretending. Some nights I'd catch myself wondering if she ever thought about what she lost. Not the company, not the house, but me. The man who believed in her before the spotlight, before the lies. But then I'd remind myself, people like her don't think in losses, they think in replacements. So I kept moving forward, each day quieter than the last, but more peaceful. And in that quiet, something new grew. Confidence, clarity, a kind of peace that no apology could ever buy back. One evening, I passed by the building where it all began. Her old office, light still flickering behind glass. For a second, it felt like time folded in on itself. Like the universe wanted to show me how far I'd come. The same place that once stripped me of everything, now couldn't touch me at all. I smiled, turned away, and kept walking. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't watching them fall, it's realizing you've already risen. There's a strange stillness that follows the storm, a silence that doesn't feel empty but earned. That's what life became for me. Quiet, deliberate, real. I stopped running from memories and started learning from them. The pain didn't vanish, it just softened, like a scar that stops throbbing but still remembers the blade. Sometimes I drive past places that once held us. The restaurant where we celebrated our first deal. The corner cafe where she used to order for both of us because she liked control disguised as care. They used to sting. Now they just remind me that every empire built on manipulation eventually crumbles under its own weight. I think people misunderstand revenge. It isn't the explosion they imagine, and it's the quiet decision to stop bleeding for someone who wouldn't have noticed you were hurt. It's choosing to build something better without needing them to see it. That's what I did. Piece by piece, I built a life that was mine. There are days I still feel the echo of her voice, the way she used to say my name like it was both a compliment and a leash. Then I remember the man I became because she broke me. Calm, grounded, sharp. The kind of man who doesn't chase storms anymore, he studies the sky. And maybe that's the real ending. Not her downfall, not my success, but the moment I stopped needing either to define me. Because healing isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. So if you ever find yourself standing where I once stood, betrayed, humiliated, wondering how to move on, remember this. You don't heal by proving them wrong, you heal by proving yourself right. And in the end, that's exactly what I did. She fired me behind my back, but life promoted me in ways she could never understand. It's strange how a story that once defined you can become just another memory in the rear view. There was a time I thought I'd never escape her shadow, that her choices would always echo louder than my own. But now, when I look back, it feels like someone else's life, someone I outgrew. What she did no longer hurts. It just reminds me of how far I've come. Because the truth is, I needed that betrayal. I needed to be broken to understand my own strength. To see that loyalty without respect isn't love, it's servitude. I learned that peace doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you stop waiting for them to. And I learned that sometimes God doesn't remove people from your life to punish you. He removes them to protect you from becoming someone you're not. Now my life is quiet, but it's full. I don't need to look over my shoulder or check who's lying next to me. I wake up every morning knowing everything I have I built on truth, not manipulation. And that's something she'll never have again. So maybe she fired me behind my back. Maybe she thought she'd humiliated me, stripped away my worth. But the reality? She freed me. She forced me to stop living for her and start living for myself. And that's the part she'll never understand. Because when she tried to end my story, all she really did was give me a new beginning. Sometimes the people who bury you don't realize you were a seed, and what grows after they're gone is something they'll never be able to kill.